Hello, and welcome to National Foreign Language Week. During this week, we take time to not only celebrate the study of the foreign languages offered here at Bellport Middle School, but also to reflect on the world outside of Bellport, to remember that we are part of a globally interdependent society, and to celebrate cultures that are different from our own. You may have seen on the news lately a lot of tensions between different groups of people. We are constantly reminded about the things that divide us. The cause of these divisions stems from a long-held hatred and bigotry brought on by a lack of understanding of cultures, religions, and races that are different from our own. This ignorance about those who are perceived as different from us creates an irrational fear. There are two ways to deal with this fear. The first is to never understand it, and eventually that fear will become violent anger. The second is to educate ourselves and embrace those who have a diverse cultural background. By studying languages and cultures that are different from our own, we learn to be more open-minded and accepting of those differences. We may even realize that we aren't so different. In fact, we are all much more alike than we may realize. No matter who we are or where we are from, we all seek to be understood, to be accepted. We all laugh, we all cry, have fears, hopes, and ambitions. No matter what our race, religion, age, gender, sexual orientation, or cultural identity, we must remember that we are all brothers and sisters of the human race. Today we're going to hear from different faculty and staff members about their experiences with expanding cultural identity, perspective, and their take on what makes us all one.
My name is Rebecca Donovan, and I am a special education teacher here at BMS in the 813 program. I've traveled to many countries, but I lived in Australia for 6 months, and I spent quite a bit of time traveling to New Zealand while I was there. I lived in a flat with 8 other people, and they were from all over the world, so Scotland, England, Americans, Germans. So we all lived together for 6 months. There were all kinds of food that we tried and ate and cooked together. We did a lot of traveling together, so wherever we went, we stayed in hostels, and people were very welcoming. In New Zealand, it was known as the hitchhiking capital of the world, so people were beyond welcoming when you got there. They're known as the nicest people in the world. No matter where you're from, they're willing to help you out, help you find your way. I remember one time I wanted to hike a glacier, Fox Glacier in New Zealand, and this person picked me and my friend up, dropped us off, asked how long we wanted to stay there for, came back 3 hours later, picked us up, dropped us off at our hostel, and then the next day took us where we needed to go. People were welcoming you with open arms in Australia. Well, it was an amazing experience because people are so much more welcoming there. They're much more trusting of one another too. They still do deal with a lot of internal issues, kind of like when the United States was established. Everything that we went through with the Europeans coming here and the conflict with the Native Americans, it's very similar in Australia, so they're still dealing with a lot of those issues with the Aboriginal groups. When the Europeans showed up in Australia, there were Indigenous groups of people there, and that was where they had lived for many, many years. So when Europeans showed up, they pushed these people out. So right now in Australia, they're still battling over grounds. America went through the same thing, but many years prior. Their biggest issue is probably that internal conflict. Part of what we did was a lot of the Australians took us to the Aboriginal tribes, and we learned how they taught us how to throw boomerangs and do their tribal dances and do the didgeridoo. We learned how to play it. So a lot of Australians embraced their culture. I have so much more of an open mind just in talking with other people from different areas and learning about their culture. Much more simplistic lifestyle. They're much more open-minded. I find that they're more embracing. They welcome people with open arms.
Home and Careers Teacher at Bellport Middle School. I wanted to share with you my wonderful experience that I had the summer of 2016. I spent 13 days in China and 18 days in Japan. Exciting thing that I did this summer is I danced on the Great Wall. They're keeping 4 sections of the Great Wall open, and the rest of it they're going to let deteriorate. Other things that I did in China, I went to the Forbidden City, Tiananmen Square. I went through the 3 gorges, and every time we turned a corner there was another skyscraper. In China right now, they're completing 1 skyscraper every 5 days. They are trying to outdo the United States. I went to visit a school in China. It was very, very exciting. The children there did dances for us. The teacher was teaching math, and all the students were just sitting there so excited and so enthusiastic. I even went into the teacher's room where all their desks are located in the teacher's room. There are no desks within the classroom. My next experience was when we went to Japan, and I stayed with my son who's in the Navy in Japan for 18 days. One of the most exciting things that I did in Japan is I climbed up to the top of Mount Fuji. We started at about 4 o'clock in the morning. It took us about 4 hours to get to the mountain. You start climbing at Station 5. We started climbing at 10 o'clock. By 6 o'clock in the evening, I was exhausted. We then continued our climb at night, and we arrived at the top of the mountain about 4 o'clock in the morning. The amazing part of Japan were the people. The people in Japan were the kindest, nicest, most considerate people that I've met in the world. The honesty of the people were amazing.
My name is Mrs. Whitaker. I'm one of the 8th grade science teachers, and I happen to live in Japan for about 2 years. I did work there too. We went over there because my husband had a postdoc. That's something that happens after you get your PhD. I was an editor there. They knew that I knew my science, so I was able to help them get published more. As far as other languages that I speak, I do know a little bit, Skoshi dake, that means a little bit, of Japanese. In Japan, it's a lot different from here. I have to say that the McDonald's is way better. And the food other than McDonald's is of course different. We have curry rice, which is one of my favorites. It's actually an Indian and Japanese mix because there actually are a lot of Indians in Japan. And of course your sushi and tempura and all of that is there. Women and children are considered to be kawaii, which means cute. People love them. They don't look down on them very much. Since I had my daughter, everyone wanted to bring her into their society. So I wasn't excluded. My husband, on the other hand, is this 6-foot red-headed giant, and they're all down here. And he was breaking into a relatively rough place to get into. He was in science. He actually did really well, but he did have some trouble as far as the language. We both did with the language, but also in his department, they would try and speak Japanese only, even though there were Chinese people who had come over. So my husband ended up sticking up for not only him, because he doesn't know any kanji, but he would stick up for himself and for the other students, not just Chinese, but we had German and French and Italian, all at the university we worked at. He would definitely get stared at just walking down the street in Japan because he stood out compared to everybody else. It made me more aware of how I consider other people that are different from myself, and it gave us both a perspective so that we could understand where they were from. I worked in Wyandanch, which is it's like 99% black, and the other 1% is not white, but I understood what they were saying when they were saying that you don't get it because you're not black. And I'm like, I'm not black, but I have been that 1% in a different country. So I'm not saying that I know anything what you're talking about, but I do know what it is to be stared at and to be the different person.
This is Riddell. I am an art teacher at the Bellport Middle School. So I studied in Italy for my bachelor's degree. I was there for 6 months. I studied in Florence. I did a spring term and a summer term, and then I had a 3-week break in between, and I traveled all throughout Europe, about 13 cities in 3 weeks. It's amazing. It's completely different than here. They live to work here, and people just work enough just to live and get by there. They're more relaxed, they enjoy life more, and here it's very busy. rush to the next thing. There, it's just relax. Well, living in Florence, I got to see all of the amazing artwork there. I also got to travel around, so I got to see artwork all over the world. We traveled to all over Italy. We traveled to Paris, Spain, Germany, all over these areas, so not in just one spot. So for Paris, we went to Aix-en-Provence, Sardinia, Corsica, which is like, well, you just traveled. It was just, you know, jump on a train with your backpack and go.
I am Ms. Stieritz, and I am the choral director here at Bellport Middle School. Actually went to Spain. I started off in Madrid. It was for a school trip, and with the family we ended up in the south of Spain, which was beautiful. I was there for a month. I really learned just to be accepting of different cultures. I guess I always was accepting, but to actually be in that country for that long and to see how their lives are so different, how their culture is so different, it brought me back here to the States, just kind of understanding where everybody comes from and why they live a certain way that they do, and it was enlightening, and I loved every minute of it. But they have a lot of the things that we do, where you can go into town and you can sit and you can eat and you can talk with friends. They have the beach in the south of Spain where you hang out with friends. It's very similar.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Pereno, and I teach Spanish at Bellport Middle School.
I'm Mr. Pereno, and I teach social studies at Bellport Middle School. We went to Portugal and Italy, 5 weeks.
It was a long time. Well, the reason we went to Portugal is because my parents are actually from there. They were born in Portugal, then they came to America when they were around 15, 16 years old. They got married and then had myself and my brother. People in Portugal are similar to people in America. The food is different though. I guess that's the way they cook. The food is completely different. They have a lot of rice, a lot of bread, a lot of meats, and potatoes.
Well, from where Mrs. Pereno's family is, it's the rural area of
That's
Portugal.
true. We live on a farm.
People were a lot more reserved, I would say, in that part. In the city, we went to Lisbon, Porto. I wouldn't say people were really too much different. I guess just more cosmopolitan, but everybody in Portugal was really nice. People are awake more at night because I guess the day is longer. People work till whatever hour, they eat dinner at a late hour.
We also traveled to Italy for our honeymoon. It was amazing. We went to Rome, we went to Venice. Our favorite place was Venice. The coolest thing about Venice was there were no cars, no streets. Everything is water canal. And in order to get around, we had to walk, and we got lost several times, but it was still okay because we always made it back to where we started from. So.
Things here, but I liked the slower pace of life in those areas. Just you go to Portugal or Italy, and in the morning they're going to the cafe and they're just chilling and having an espresso and a pastry. They're not really in a rush to get to work. I'm sure they work hard, but they're just not like killing themselves to try to get there like right away. They relax in the morning. Like I said, they'll have their coffee and their pastry. They'll see their friends. I feel like that's a very important value over there, is that people get together and make those connections with each other. I did like that. I wish it was more like that here.
My name is Mrs. Holtz. I work as an assistant or an aide. Raised in Canada, in Quebec. Yes, in Montreal, Quebec. Yeah. They speak French, Français. Very friendly, always happy, always willing to help. They're just more laid back. They just enjoy life. Winters are very long, so they hibernate more than we do. But they love winter sports. They're very big in the snow. They love skiing, skating, downhill sledding, of course. That's what the kids do. I moved back to the United States when I was 21. I was in the United States Marines, 4.5 years. I was in Okinawa, Japan for 8 months, and I also served during Desert Storm. So I was in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia for 5 months. In Okinawa, wonderful. Very friendly, hospitable, smile all the time, they're hardworking. Saudi Arabia was a different experience. I met some nice people, they were actually very friendly, but then again, because I'm a woman, they didn't always speak to me. You aren't allowed, women are treated differently over there. They don't have rights like women do here. If I walked into a Baskin Robbins and wanted an ice cream cone, they would not serve me. I would have to hand the money over to the gentleman that was with me, and he would have to pay for it, and I would have to exit the store and wait for it. As a matter of fact, while I was there, there was an article in a local paper. It was distributed in Arabic, but also translated in English, and they were actually in the process of opening a shelter for some women that were there, because unfortunately, if women get divorced in that country, if they're abandoned, they call them being abandoned. If a gentleman that marries her decides you're no good, I don't want you anymore, they leave them in the streets. They can't work. They're not allowed to work in those countries. So, and the families don't take them back also. So these women are homeless and sometimes even abused. So they were in the process of opening shelters for women who were in that situation. It's very sad. I believe that if they were able to reach out to other countries that do treat their women like that, but in a more civil, diplomatic way, if they were wanting to receive that information or the customs that we have here, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it should change all around the world, because women shouldn't be treated that way. It's a disgrace. It's sad. It's very sad.
McCray. I am an ENL ELA teacher. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, which is a country unto itself. But then at 9 months old, I traveled to St. Martin to live with my grandmother. I remember being able to hear the ocean all night while I was sleeping, because the backyard of my house was the ocean, was the beach. We lived in Phillipsburg, right on Front Street. And growing up, I learned English, but I learned English with a very different accent, with a West Indian accent. And I learned Papiamento and Dutch. So while I was there and I went to school, I learned to speak in Dutch and I learned to speak in Papiamento and English, but the English just had a very heavy accent. So when I got here, when I was 4 and a half, getting ready to go to elementary school, my mother couldn't understand me when I came back. Only everybody's your family. So, so as you're growing up, everybody's your cousin. Your cousin's gonna carry you here, your cousin's gonna carry you there. You couldn't leave the house without your cousins, without your family. It was just all family. It was very family oriented.
Miss Million, 7th grade health. I have traveled to Haiti and Kenya. So I was able to visit Kenya about 8 years ago. In Kenya, I visited 2 places. I visited the capital in Nairobi, which I was actually surprised when I landed there. We got out, it's like a city. It's like New York City or Boston. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting to be very, very poor. We were taken to the slums of the city, where they actually live on landfills, which was very shocking to me. It was very disheartening and sad. Those people do whatever they can to survive. They were picking through garbage, trying to find food. The only positive about it is that all their children do get an education. They do get fed while they're in school, and hopefully the government will try and help these people also get an education if they didn't graduate high school and get jobs. But as far as the city part, just like New York City. So then we traveled to Mombasa, which is on the East Coast, and that was very third world. Most of the villages, it's not even towns, now we're talking about villages, do not have electric, do not have a sanitation system. And if you don't have electric, you don't have your TVs, you don't have a dishwasher, a washer machine, a dryer, a hot stove, or an electric stove, heating. So that was, again, very surreal to be able to walk out and you see these commercials on TV of what, third world countries look like, and then I'm put there and it is what it is. But I have to say, even though they don't have all the material things we do in the United States, they're still very happy, peaceful, content people. They find their entertainment in playing games outside, whether it's soccer or some sort of like football or kickball. They have all these toys made out of wood that they make themselves. They create baskets out of leaves, palm trees. They get most of their food from the fruit trees that are there, or from the ocean, the fish or the chicken or the cows they raise. And both in Nairobi and in Mombasa, it was I was able to visit the schools, and education is their number one goal. If they can get all the children into school and educated, that will bring, obviously, with their degrees, they'll be able to get jobs, bring in money, and so on and so forth. And while visiting those schools, I have to say, the kids did not make a peep. They respected their teachers like I've never seen before. They appreciated the fact that they were able to get an education, because not all of them actually do. I had met a few kids that were 12, 13 years old and had never stepped into a school. And so then the organization that I was with tries to encourage them to get to school so that they can get an education, so they can better themselves and their families someday. And last year I was actually able to fly down to Haiti with an organization that really focuses on, again, education and educating the adults on how to farm their land so that they can actually produce food for themselves and then actually sell that to other countries to make money for them, because again, they are a very poor, needy country, very similar to Kenya when I was there. From being able to visit these third world countries, I've really have come to appreciate some simple things like our cell phones, having a TV, having hot water, being able to take a shower with hot water, having a paved road. In both countries, in certain areas, there were no paved roads. There were no lights, so it was pretty chaotic on those roads. It was scary at times. Cars themselves, the clothing we have for you guys, the Nikes that you wear, the Beats that you put in your ears, they do not have those things there, but yet they are still content. They don't need those material things. And so coming back here, I really appreciated being an American, what the United States has given us and the opportunities that we have here that you don't find in other countries.
I was lucky enough to run across a woman in McDonald's actually, and she had had the experience of living in the United States and introduced herself, and she ended up being the person who helped me through my pregnancy because I didn't speak Japanese. It's just that connection that we need, and it doesn't matter where you're from. You just have to keep in mind that maybe somebody needs help. You can be that stranger who gets up and goes and helps somebody.
I love America. I love my country because I feel like we have the most opportunity here, which is why people come here from all over the world. But what I do appreciate about other countries is that they're very open to other ideas. I feel like we say we're open here, but really we're not as open as we say that we are.
What they don't realize is that all these different cultures come together to make the United States what it is. Get to know people.
So now that you've heard all of these experiences from others about traveling abroad, the challenge is up to you to broaden your own horizons and to increase your perspective. It's up to us to recognize that no matter what another person's race, creed, color, religion, gender, language, or origin, we are all equal. We are all one people. No matter where we come from, we must treat one another with respect. The same respect that we would want given to us. So I challenge each and every one of you to go out into the world and make it a better and kinder place. And start with Bellport Middle School. Put yourself into the shoes of others. Be kind, be empathetic. Don't look and judge people for their skin color. Don't look and judge people for their origin or for the languages that they speak. Instead, look at them as human beings. Look at them how you would want the world to look at you. Then we will have a better society. That is what global citizenship is all about. And that is what makes us all one.